is just a little bit older than most of us, you know, and he also has some great things to say too. So there you go. I mean, that's a panel. Can't get any better than that.
I have some free CDs, about 6 of them, for anybody who wants.
Yeah, please, question.
Bring me back one.
I'll get for that.
No,
I'll take all 6.
Friends who aren't.
Oh man, I have to get up.
Going fast.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know, Scott, if you want to moderate this, but I'd really like to open the floor to questions, and this is really, I don't think you're ever going to get this opportunity again. It's not going to happen. Scott, do you have a question?
Me?
No?
I guess, well, I'll start off with, we have a certain movement going on in the city at the moment, just a couple blocks away, and maybe the panel can discuss Occupy Vancouver and the Occupy movement and how it maybe pertains to what went on in the late 70s and early 80s.
Good question.
Well, it'll take some intellect. I'll pass it.
I don't know. I was in a punk band, so no. I think it's you know, it's obviously it's a continuation, and a lot of people have the same sort of attitude that we had back then. You know, we were involved in a lot of demonstrations and a lot of benefits, even the pop bands and the art bands and everyone. It wasn't just the punk rock bands. I mean, it seemed like every week we were doing a Rock Against Radiation gig, or a gig for Guatemala, or a gig for prisons, or all that sort of thing. So I think, you know, it's just nice to see that an activist spirit lives on, and you know, they're fighting for a really, really good cause, and support to them. That's for sure.
Nathan, did you have anything? Because you've been to the...
I think it's great. I marched the first day, and I've been down there a few times. I think it's going to get actually bigger. Maybe not right now, but I think this is the beginning of a whole new revolution. I think with technology and you know, people are brought closer together, and they know the information right then. And I think it's great, and I think that we're going to change the world.
Yeah.
And it's time.
Yeah, I think that as well, what we were, you know, what Subhumans were kind of trying to point out is that the people weren't governing our country anymore. We were being governed by corporations. You know, we could see that progression sort of taking place, sort of the takeover, and I think that's kind of what the Occupy movement is trying to stand up to now. Is trying to, you know, take back, you know, people trying to take back control of their country. You know.
Well, just have a government that actually acts on behalf of the people. It doesn't give all the benefits and all the breaks to, you know, the people who are in power, the corporations and things. So yeah, and I would totally agree with Nathan that I think it's just the start of something. I think it's just something that's just going to roll and roll and roll, because conditions in the world aren't going to get any better. So obviously more and more people are going to become affected by it, and more people will join them. So yeah, it's good.
I think the Vancouver connection is great too, that Ann Busters helped to inspire this whole movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Joe was down there playing, and you know, there's a music connection there too.
I have a collector nerd question. You guys all put out a lot of great music, but a lot of it in its original release was very limited. Do you guys have your own music? Do you have the complete collection of your stuff? Or, and if you don't, what do you wish you had the most?
Oh, let's just run, we'll run the panel on that, starting from the end.
That's an awesome question.
No, I don't think I have a complete collection of works I've been involved with.
Wimpy, I'm allowed to call you Wimpy.
Yeah.
I'm bad. I went out and bought Death to the Sickoids when I read in Snot Rag that you had misplaced the pressing plate. I went, oh God, gotta get that record, you know. So whether you have copies of
I think
it
I
or
have one
not.
of those buried somewhere. But
Do you know that that's the one that I've seen go for the highest amount of money too, of all the Vancouver ones?
That's a $500, right?
I got two.
that's all I got to say.
Yeah, that and the first Bud Luxford record, those are the two that have
That's
gone
a
for
great
the most money.
So I can answer fairly easily. I have all 2 of our singles. It didn't take a lot to save those.
Donald from Zulu found some of the Brain Eater masters in the garbage when was it IRC closed down. So he got those back to me. So pretty well. I think I got the collection of everything.
Yeah, the floppy disk one.
Well, the floppy disk one, I have to admit, I just have an unplayed pressing.
Okay,
Which
so
I'm
you
going
don't
to
get
master off
You don't have
that.
the cover and the little envelope and everything like that? No?
Yeah.
That's a great one. They just went out and bought a bunch of manila envelopes and then.
Oh, that was the manila envelope one. That was actually the band before. That was with Buck Cherry. And those guys. Yeah. Dave Gregg snitched all the stuff from the place he worked at, so that gave us all the packaging supplies and everything like this. And then the next one was with my art guys, was with like Trevor and Evo and Steve, and we did a flexi disc, and we'd fold it up and splatter painted paper and stuff like this, and put all these posters with it and stuff like this. And I told the guys, I said, everybody's got to make an original piece of artwork with this thing. It's going to be a poster in it. And they go, well, who's going to pay for it? I go, your girlfriends are going to buy them off you, okay? I don't care. $50 will do it. Everybody's got that, you know. So they do it that way, and then we get the money, and then we go and print them off, and then we staple them with the package, and then sell it for like $2 or something, I guess. Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of stuff, tapes, and the only thing I don't have is the compilation tape that came on stitching small tears. But I had piles of stuff. Some of it's really bad, and other stuff I just haven't been too lazy to kind of deal with. The best stuff is on the album.
Right.
I have a question that I want to taking from you, from what you just said. And it's perfect because both Nick and Jim are here, and I want to know what happened. Okay, you talk about old Vancouver vinyl, and there is, as Nick mentioned, the Bud Luxford LP, the first one that came out. That was a, well, it's a vinyl record, loaded with all these songs from what we call fuck bands, and if you were watching the film, you know what a fuck band is. And I was doing a CITR fill-in show last week with, and Nick was one of the guests, and we were talking about this album. And this album was made in the Brain Eater studio, which is Jim's place, and the tracks are, it just sounds fabulous. So I understand that each band only got 1 hour to record one song.
There's your engineer right here. Here's the
1 hour, one song, and the thing was over. And I just want to know I mean, it's curious.
Well, we had a little room built in, we had the house in Chinatown, and we built our little recording studio. And at this point, we hadn't even gotten the 4-track in yet. I literally had an Akai cassette deck that was supposed to be really good quality with binaural headphones, built-in microphone.
Binaural, that sounds pretty good.
And we had this really ancient mixing board, which I wish I still had to this day. I cherish it, I still had it, but I don't know where it went or when it went. It was an Altec 1220. And we mixed off of that with mics and stuff we had from the Smiling Buddha and stuff like this, all down to this cassette deck, which was a good, you know, it was best anybody got their hands on at that time type of thing, you know. Later on, we get our Tascam 4-track, you know, the DVX noise reduction, but you know that was getting too fancy.
Yeah, but what he's not telling you though, is when he had his mixing board, what they had done was they'd spray painted the whole mixing board black, so you didn't actually know what controls. So all you could do was just twiddle the knobs around until it sounded like something what you wanted it to sound like. So you couldn't say add more treble because he'd be like, and that's actually a true story, which is the reason why that record sounds so weird. Because if you listen to it, well, you never find it. But if you did get a chance to listen to it, it sounds like some weird old 50s record or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a fabulous recording.
It is. It's
But
absolutely.
we weren't, the Brain Eaters weren't allowed to be on it, if I remember.
We weren't a fuck band.
Oh.
These guys were serious as could be. But I think everybody else here, except for Nathan, I think everybody else here is on at least 1 or 2 songs on that.
Yeah, that was great. It was great to do. It was great to do. But the reason we painted everything black in those days is bands would have like warehouses and where they practice and play, and every now and then someone would get all their gear stolen. It would be gone, just gone, never to be returned or anything. And I got the idea. You can't pawn something that's just black. No dials, no knobs, no information. It's just this black thing. And I figured, well, they couldn't pawn it then, you know? And so that's what I did,
And the Brain Eater sound was born that very day.
yeah. Small details like, where's the treble? I don't know. But basically nothing was ever stolen.
That's a good story. Yes.
So, I'd like to thank you as the director for this film.
Thank you.
I remember who I am in a lot of ways that I've forgotten, and that's because of you guys, because being of this relatively the same age, and sitting here with my liquor and really enjoying this film. It's just freaking great. So much. I mean, I was in Montreal, which is a big Euro, like Victoria, Vancouver was, and I was in Thunder Bay in the late 70s, early 80s. You talk about isolationism in Vancouver. You got no clue. We had one band, they were a lot of fun. But I'd like to just ask you guys.
That's good context you're providing, by the way.
Pardon me?
That's good context for this question.
Well, it's all real, right? But I'd like to ask you guys. You talked in the film about where it started and kind of where it ended. But like for each of you, where was like? Can you pick a day or an event that was your highlight of that?
Wow,
there's a party or there's something, right? And if you could just go down the line, just give us that, because that's what this is the takeaway, right?
Let's start at this end this time, because Brian's going to put it in a fair
I'm not sure if I understood the question anyways.
The question is there a moment where it was Nirvana? If you can remember. Those who can't remember aren't here tonight.
Your friends told you about it later, right?
I felt some of that, I think, when I first saw the first Avengers gig, and when I saw the Subhumans and a few other bands. But for me personally, playing was Rock Against Reagan. It was the first time that our band kind of came out full force and was, I just felt like this was,
That was it.
yeah, that was it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think those kind of cathartic moments. I mean, I would say for me, the first one, it was in February of 1979, and before then, things were sort of starting to go. I mean, when DOA first started, there was maybe 50 people in the whole scene, and most of them were in bands. Half of them were in bands, and the other half were like boyfriends or girlfriends of the other people. So, as 1978 wore on, we won the Battle of the Bands later on that year, and that brought a few more people around, and DOA and Subhumans both had records out. But there was a gig on Valentine's Day in 1979. It was called St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And it was these three yokels that put this gig on. And it was going to be us, the Subhumans, and the Dish Rags. And it was going to be at this club at the foot of Main Street called O'Hara's, which is long gone. You couldn't even imagine this club could exist. It was on a pier that jutted out in the middle of Main Street. And there was this big, huge, dark, dense old barn that probably held about 1,000 people. And you literally had to walk down a pier to get there. And you could park underneath on the pier and take it's a crazy place anyway. But at that point, I mean, it was still at the point where we were drawing, if we got 100 people or 200 people to a hall gig, it was a really good gig at that point. But they'd advertise this thing, this St. Valentine's Day, Hit Somebody You Love, and put up the posters everywhere. And we just, for us, it wasn't one of our friends who was the promoter. It was sort of an outside kind of corporation, so we didn't really know what to expect. But I can remember getting there on that night, and, I think the first band was already on, maybe it was Tim Ray or somebody like that was the first band that was already on. And there was already about 250 people there at 7 o'clock at night. And I thought, this is pretty amazing, all these people here. And went backstage and went to the dressing room, came back out an hour later, and there's 500 people there. And by the end of the night, there was 1,000 people there. But this was the first time that this scene had infiltrated to the suburbs. I mean, there was Hells Angels there was Lugans from North Vancouver, there was people from Delta, there was young kids, there was just all sorts of people. And it ended up just like the energy in that place. It was like, I don't know if it was good energy or bad energy or negative energy, but I can just remember that night. It was just, by the time the Subhumans went on stage, I remember Wimpy getting ripped off stage, coming back with his pants off. that happened more than once. That wasn't just that night, but it did happen that night for sure. Rampage throwing his shoe into the audience, and it was just out of control. And it ended up at the end of the night, and it just in a riot at the end of the night, essentially. And the cops came in, and certain guy in the back row ended up on the front page of the Georgia Straight with his teeth all missing and stuff. But that was the first night. That was the first time that that's Gordon Nickel up there, by the way. He's the guy that got worked over that night. Iconic Orif picture that was on the front cover of the Georgia Straight. But that was the first time that I really felt that it wasn't just us and our friends. That there was somebody more. There was other people there who knew about it. So that was it for me.
mine had to be, in a stranger way, was we were playing the Smiling Buddha, and someone said, "Do you know that there's a crazed party going on at your place right now, and Simon Snodface is throwing everything out the windows and the doors and everything like that?" And I went, "What? What?" You know, and we finished off the set. We ran home. We ran back to Chinatown, and there was kids hanging out the windows. It was like a cartoon, you know, just like a Mad Magazine cartoon. The doors were open, the kids are out, people were coming and going, and then, you know, that kind of great party, eh? And you're going, that's our place, that's our stuff, you know. And we got in there, and I envisioned everything would have been destroyed, and everything is, Simon and his gang was hanging over our equipment going, nobody touches the Brain Eater stuff. Our dead bodies. And it was great. That was my glory.
Oh boy, I haven't changed. For me, there's no way I could think of one moment, because there were a lot of really great moments associated with that scene. But for me, it wasn't. You know, in the film, there's a lot of sort of emphasis on partying and things like that. But for me, it was the gigs. Like the music was. I think the highlight for me was almost always watching Chuck Biscuit's drumming. Like every time I watched that guy, it was just like magic, and I just would get so excited. And so any DOA gig and Subhumans gig.
Can you remember the first time seeing DOA?
Riveting. Yeah. It was like entering another world, not a universe.
Because I'd come back from Britain and I'd seen lots of the good bands over there, but there was no way that there was anybody anywhere near as hardcore as them.
Well, mine was the Subhumans.
And Subhumans.
I
just happened to see.
I still had the hair down to here, the overalls, the whole bit like that, you know. And I went to the Quadra, I think it was, club, and they were playing, and I went, this is where it's going to be at. This is where the heart of everything is going to be. And on top of that, this is so cool, and there's no fluffy hair.
Yeah. It was great. The Quadra Club was a hardcore underground lesbian club. It ended up being where, I don't know, what was it, the Starfish Room or something like that ended up taking it over years and years. I don't know who found that. I think Jamie from private school found that place, but they would let us in. They would let the dish rags in and to play there and drink there when they were really young, and just, it was so underground. It was so under the radar, you know. That's when talking about when there was 50 people in the scene, that would be like your clubhouse there, right?
Yeah, I can't think of any particular, one moment that stands out that I, would want to elaborate on.
It was just all beautiful.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty unfolding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wondering who's making music now and what kind of music you're making.
Wow. Okay, Nathan. Who's making music and what kind of music are you making? That's great.
Well, I'm still making music, but it's, I don't know what kind of music it is. It's the same, you know. My problem is when I was making music back then, people were calling it noise. And I could never figure that out, right? Because, so I'm making kind of, I've progressed on, and maybe it's still noise, but I think it's music, right? It's more abstract and...
More abstract, that's excellent. Because we thought Tunnel Canary was pretty abstract right there. As for us, we still, well, a few years ago, after not playing for 25 years, we got a ridiculous offer to go and play in Japan, which we did for the free trip to Japan, and ended up having so much fun that we sort of kept playing. And the good part about that was, we sort of rekindled friendships that we had, and actually made a new record, which is the same that Wimpy did with the Subhumans too. They broke up for years and years. When they got back together again, they made a new record too. So it was nice, It's one thing still playing, it's also another thing when you're still creating too, because there's a million, like you see, that would never have happened with the punk rock scene, but like you see with the regular rock scene, all you have to do is look at the ads for the River Rock Casino, and it's a bunch of old, Red Robinson there,
We're recording right now. I got a great Brain Eater band, best one I've ever had. No surfing on the guys in the past, but these guys are really good. I got Dwayne, Timmy, and Zippy Pinhead, who was on the screen there as my drummer. And we've been recording up at Gord's Studio, Paramount, and first releases will be coming out soon. It's going to be on ibraineater.com, and the music is going to be all free to the world. 2 weeks of release.
Thank you.
I guarantee at least by February or January. So give me a little longer on it. We're just getting the mixes done now, but yeah, that's the plan. Thank you very much.
You can press some vinyl on that?
Well, that'll be the idea. Is every 2 weeks there'll be a new song to download for free, and as time goes by, then we'll say, hey, you like those songs? We've got them on cherry red vinyl and this fabulous 100 edition packaging, pressing, signed by everybody. So
$89.
Exactly. Well, that's for the collectors, right? That's for the people who want to collect something that has our signatures, the artwork on it, in a package.
Cool.
Yeah. Other than that, it's going to be free.
I really wish I had time to write new material, but tomorrow I'm actually getting together with Rodney Graham, who was in New Jerk, and my husband, Bill, who's in the Pointed States, and our 12-year-old daughter, and we're playing some songs that I wrote about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, and we're actually going to perform next week. One song, because our drummer's 12, so she kept
Let's see, I don't think I've written a song for quite a long time. Had a band going called the Trespassers at the beginning of the year, but it only lasted about 3 months. So at the moment, I'm not producing anything musically.
Let's get together, man.
I'm open for offers.
Good.
I have a couple things to say. Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'm just talking about writing music and stuff like that. Obviously, I do, and I love how the movie was put together and stuff like that. How all the things that, all the bands that I've known from Vancouver beforehand and so on and so forth. It's just cool to have it all collected in those videos of the shows and stuff like that, because when my drummer's hammered on the ground and like going, oh no, we have to play it like this band, and it's one of you guys, it's one of these, you know what I mean? And then he sits up and he's memorized your song so well. He's lying on the ground, sits up, picks up his sticks, and can play whatever song. And it's awesome. And on the female note now, in the scene in Vancouver now, they all are, like, you are one of the bigger ones of influence in this scene for Vancouver. I can tell you that. When I saw you on stage in these, like, in this, you know, like, every girl dances like that. Everything, and I really appreciate this movie. I appreciate you guys a lot. You guys are still doing good work on this, and thank you, and it's awesome. I'm just really happy that it's still around.
Yes, yeah. Hi, Jillian.
Hi. Just to continue what he was kind of saying, for you, I'm sorry I forgot your name, but how did you deal with the sexism that you faced being, like, we heard some of the comments that were being thrown at you on stage. How did you and the other girls deal with that?
We tried to ignore it as much as we possibly could. I mean, there was we got so used to it that it didn't even bother us after a while. It was just part of the wallpaper, and you just got on with playing. But I mean, that's not, I was really relating to what Penelope from the Avengers was saying too about, you know, changing her style of dress. Like we dressed like boys deliberately because we didn't want that kind of attention. But all you had to do was be female and, you know, 15 years old. You got those kind of comments. So, you know, we didn't do anything to try to encourage that kind of behavior. So we just ignored it.
Which was a great response, because, you know, eventually those trolls just went away. That's good.
Times were really different.
I don't think people really realize about the dish rags. I mean, people just don't talk about it enough. First thing, they're 15 years old, and the second thing, there was no all-girl bands at the time. There was the Runaways, but the Runaways were a guy's creation, right? They were like 5 girls that he just picked out of a lineup and made into a band. I mean, they were the only girl punk rock band in the world, and they were 15, and they were from Victoria. So, you know, you just have no idea.
The odds were against us.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say so.
Well, what about Penetration and Slits?
Well, that was after that.
Oh, yeah?
Diss Rags were going before Penetration and the Slits were, for sure. Yeah.
We're really old.
I think there was a band called Fanny that was like
Yeah, a hard rock band.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're just splitting hairs with the timeline there. It would have been, you know, the same time anyway, so.
Bev, then front row.
Okay, this is for Suzanne and it's for all of you, and it's just really a statement from me. I'm so glad I was there. I heard some of the best music I've ever heard in my life.
If you weren't there.
And we also say Bev Davies took all the fabulous shots. She still has the most fabulous shots. She made the scene alive, she had spirit, energy, and artistic beauty.
What I want to do is I want to thank Suzanne for the opportunity to open up my archives of photographs, and though I was slow on getting the hundreds of them to you, a lot of them are here in this. A lot of them are going to appear in the 4 webisodes that might show up in one of the DVD packages.
Your entire thing is on the DVD.
Yeah, and it's on now. Bev Davies, just look it up on the internet or on your site. But I just also want to say to all of you on the stage there is I have such amazing photographs of you guys that you've not seen.
Yeah.
And the ownership of who owns these pictures, I always struggle with. That you guys own them. I took them. As an artist, I took them.
You show them.
But it's part of your heritage, and it's part of my collection. And I just want to slowly, somehow or another, figure out a way to get you some photographs of things like that. That show that you had, that I have the huge painting from. I was a teenage brain eater. I have photographs from that. I'm talking to Jim. Just amazing. Like, I think amazing stuff. I scan them and I go, holy shit, I forgot about that, or geez.
And you see, you remember that show better than I do.
I do want to do a book at some point, but I really want to just make sure that the people that are in the pictures and the people that we all love that are not here with us anymore today, that we can somehow or another share them. And thank you, Suzanne, for letting us see them and share so many of them now.
I think that's another thing that doesn't get talked about too, is just how many unsung heroes there were. I mean, people like Bev, who took the pictures, like Nancy Smith, who tape recorded all those shows, like Lenore, who unfortunately is not with us anymore, who was responsible for videoing all that sort of stuff. I mean, the scene was inclusive. Everybody had a job to do at that point back there. Whether your job was to get the beer, or whether your job was to play music, or to host the party, or to drive the gear around, or to record it. It was really, really, really inclusive. And that, for all of us, I think that's really what makes it, what makes the memory so special. It's just that everybody back then was friends. It didn't matter whether you were in Tunnel Canary or the Subhumans or the Pointed Sticks or whatever. It's not like nowadays where a Tunnel Canary fan would never be seen dead at a Pointed Sticks show or at a Subhuman show. It was everybody was doing it together for each other at the time.
Small town.
Yeah, and that's for, I think for all of us, I think that's probably the thing we take away from it.
Nick's really right on. That's really important, was the idea that every scene was so small that we had the band together in a warehouse to have a big enough thing to call it something. And then when we would have these things take place, the interchange of ideas, the thoughts, the energies was extremely exciting, inspirational too, as we see 30 years later. That's a synergy you can't create unless it creates itself. We had an environment that was perfect at that time for it.
And Suzanne did a great job of talking about that in the movie, about how, it was the art scene, and it was the gay scene, and it was the Richmond scene, and the White Rock scene, and the Victoria scene. It was just all of these people that really probably didn't quite fit in with everybody else there, that somehow managed to migrate into downtown. And back then, downtown Vancouver was probably a bit like what New York was like in the 70s too, for people like the Ramones and Blondie and stuff. It was a bit of a ghetto down here. I mean, sort of anywhere between Robson Street and Main Street, there wasn't people living down there, right? There was businesses down there, but at the end of the day, the businesses would clear out. So there was warehouses and all sorts of, cheap rent and things like that, all sorts of places that were available to us that really aren't available anymore.
That's right. Downtown Vancouver was dead. When the sun went down after 5, it was dead. And there was so much opportunity for artists to have very free or inexpensive places.
Well, for example, the warehouse that we used to have on Canby Street, the one we had on Canby Street, where it was like, it was a 6th-floor warehouse, and there was bands practicing on at least 4 of the floors. So if you were to walk by there, all of it just be open, you could hear the Subhumans on the top floor, the private school, and the Pointed Sticks, and then DOA playing down in the basement or whatever. Railway Street, same thing.
That whole thing's kind of evolved into practice spaces now. Really, there still are places in Vancouver where practicing all at the same time, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice that Yaletown was like a warehouse district, so that, you know, I think left.
It was pretty much a warehouse district all the way from Granville over to
That's
Main
right.
Street.
We had a studio in Yaletown where we just rented a little part in the front and paid like $200 a month, but we broke down the wall at one point and put a door and opened it up to like 6,000 square feet of beautiful space, dusty with all those windows around, and we terrorized that till they got wise.
Yeah, I don't think
the police department, the fire department went, boys, no, go away now.
I don't think the word loft had been invented at
Yeah,
that time.
yeah. And you slept with a baseball bat in those days half the time.
I thought you were going to say you slept with a bass player.
No. That's for another time. That's in the book.
I just want to invite another question.
My question is for you. As a 15-year-old girl, what made you want to start a band?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
Boys.
No, it wasn't boys. No,
Music.
You know, again, it was music. I mean, growing up, the three dish rags, we all went to elementary school together. I mean, you know, I love seeing that with the subhumans and, you know, you and Joe and Jerry. Because we've got all those elementary school pictures of the three of us in our nerdy mother-inspired costumes. But we all grew up together, and the three of us just always were really big music fans, and so we just started playing, and then it was really, yeah, and part of it, my cousin Chris Arnett was in the Furies at that time, and he's in the film as well, and they had organized a punk rock show in 1977, and we came over and watched them play and just got all excited and inspired, and they asked us if we wanted to open. We'd never done a show before. It was like, oh, okay. We just worked really hard and came over and played that show. But I think, you know, it was the first Ramones album, too, that really inspired me as well. And that's now my still love. You know, I don't believe in just listening to old school punk rock. but I mean, that's one of the albums that still really stands out for me.
That's a great question, a great answer too. Yes.
Sort of a two-part question. For you, were there any bands that you couldn't find enough evidence to include in the film, either filmed or recorded?
Yes,
What would
yes,
they be?
and I'm very upset
for
about that.
the panel, are there any great unsung Vancouver bands that have just disappeared into the mists of history?
This is, in the film, the musical body of work is kind of the greatest hits, you know, in a way. It is. It's kind of the greatest hits. I mean, these bands were the ones that certainly I played on my radio show at CITR in 1979, right? They had the singles, they had the tunes, they had the following. But there were, for example, in the hardcore thing, I'll talk about the Rabid. And the Rabid was a great hardcore band. Didn't get their shit together to do much of anything, right?
Well, their big mistake was disagreeing with each other on whether or not to be on the Complication album or not.
Yeah. Right. So that's, you know, that's, as soon as you're not on that, I mean, that's it, right? I would say that some of that, I know somebody that had footage, I couldn't get it. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. Pardon me?
The Furies.
The Furies, yep, the Furies. There's another band that didn't really, you know, they didn't get the vinyl thing really going. Really.
There's no video of them really either.
And there is no video. I mean, we have the little bit of video of the Shades, but
Private School.
Private School.
Because the Furies were Vancouver's first punk rock band. I mean,
Yeah.
That's pretty much. I don't think you can really debate that they were the first.
It's well documented.
It's well done. Okay, Vancouver Punk Rock, Japanese Hall, July 30th, 1977 was, or is, a date that is considered by many, I suppose, a official punk rock birth, which is included both the Furies, Jade's cousin's band, and the Dish Rags. And that was, that'll be 32 years.
Does the panel all agree that that was the day it was born?
34.
That's right, Sonny, way back then, that's when it all would have happened, and I'm going to tell you, way back then. Oh.
some of us, like, I wasn't actually in the first place, I wasn't too interested in making a record. I didn't have any money, and it was just like, to make a blow against the empire in a sense, right? To kind of, make some noise, or to.
As opposed to blowing the empire.
Yeah, it was like, social protest kind of stuff, but, we were on, if it wasn't on student loans, it was on welfare, and you were trying, you bought your equipment with student loan, and then you dropped out, and, you tried to figure out how you were gonna make it, but, we never thought about it as a musical career, to tell you the truth. I mean, I guess you had fantasies sometimes about, that stuff, but realistically, for us anyway, that's why there was no recordings actually made, and we just taped everything. And then in the end, I guess it was about, I didn't put it out until 2008, and that's when the younger people kind of went crazy, the noise guys, right? But, yeah, it's, I don't know when it started. I remember going to, I think it was Japanese hall gigs and seeing, I can't even remember, it was the Avengers or some.
They were early. Avengers were early. They were early in.
They were one of the first bands that came from somewhere else.
They did 2 shows at the or they were scheduled to do 2 shows pre-me, because my first gig was DOA 1979 March 23rd. So it was prior to that, and they were playing the Japanese Hall 2 nights, and they got closed down on the first night, and somebody helped me, but they played somewhere else the second night.
They played downtown, actually, in some building. It was just, I don't know if it was off of,
Gastown, I think, wasn't it? Like, it was upstairs.
maybe it was Gastown, somewhere. I can't remember. That was a great gig. But all I remember is, like, when you look kind of different then, it was like running a gauntlet, like to get home, because all the guys from the suburbs would be, like, oh, let's beat on those punk rock guys.
Oh, bands with guys with baseball bats in them that would just jump out of the blue and go after you.
You'd walk 3 miles before you took the bus, put it that way.
Yeah.
And then the photographs that are in the movie of the Avengers were the same spring, and it was at that place, the Janus Theater on 4th Avenue, sort of at the top of the hill, and they played 2 nights, and the Subhumans opened 1 night for them, and I can't remember who opened the other night, but that was in the same, it was like amazing, just within a few months. And it was just prior to DOA playing in Chicago. I think DOA had already left by the time the Avengers were playing there, as they'd left on their trip to Chicago.
I just, for this audience, because a lot of you are certainly, I don't believe were around back then, just looking out in the audience. And I think one of the things to always keep in mind when you're thinking about Vancouver and this scene is that Vancouver as a musical center, this was not considered a musical center by the establishment at all. So this was very much an underground thing, and all the relationships ran north and south. So we touch on it a little bit with this thing with the San Francisco connection, but there is really no evidence that Vancouver had any kind of a camaraderie or a fraternity with anything going on in Toronto.
No.
And Montreal is completely different.
Yeah.
And I just did this radio interview in Winnipeg just before the thing screened there tonight, and that particular DJ there, who is really on top of old school punk, he was saying that he's never seen a film where there's so much documentation of the punk scene in the film. And in Montreal, the only thing they had was the 222s, which were being documented by a guy who now is one of the vice presidents of one of the TV stations. And in Toronto, very little. We did a screening in Toronto, and Colin Brunton, who did The Last Pogo, was there, and every other, all these other punks, and they kept on saying, my God, this is a scene that absolutely documented itself. And that's everything from the TV stations that did the early rock videos before MTV, to people like yourself, Jim, making your own films. Danny Novak, Lenore doing the same thing. I mean, there really, really was a breadth of certainly moving archival footage taken, and then this massive amount of work from Beth, of course,
and Ed Mowbray.
Ed Mowbray,
with his connection at Vancouver, there used to be a live show on Vancouver.
Yeah, it's a Vancouver show.
And John Anderson, who had the gallery,
Gina show,
Pumps and stuff. he just said to me, document everything, you know? And I didn't really know what he was talking about, you know, I just thought we were getting away with murder, and I liked that.
You're very well documented.
And my comment to what you just said, you're exactly right. Montreal was lost in that progressive European thing. There was no punk scene per se in Montreal.
And they still think we
I
don't.
was there in '77.
Well, except that we had Negavision come here.
Negavision,
And that
yeah.
really opened our eyes in terms of Montreal style because.
That's very important.
Yeah, they were.
It is?
Well, Negavision came and they looked like sort of like the B-52s, but more
From
gnarly.
Planet Venus.
Yeah.
You know?
And that visual style was really important. I think when we saw them, we thought, oh wow, this gives us more, you know, leverage or more, you know, ways to kind of.
It might have been more technologically advanced, but it was a different approach. And in Toronto, with Frankie Bannerman on those guys, like, but you're right. Like, as I traveled across the country, I got to the mountains where there was east-west thing. As soon as I got over the mountains, there was no east-west at all.
Well, what I used to love about Megavision, sometimes we had them on our shows when we played with Buddha, I remember one, and the beauty was they came to the gig with all their equipment in a shopping cart. Hairdos up to here, and all their face makeup on, and all their black clothing, and it was Go-Go, Gigi, and Jono, and they were fabulous. They were artwork, perfect art, you know, and wonderful wild musicians, and yeah, but it's just all the gear in the shopping cart was such a beautiful sight.
In comparison to that, I remember when that band, The Government, came from Toronto, when they came out here, they set up residence.
The Government.
They set up residence in pumps for a while. They were all like Canada Council grad guys in like turtlenecks and stuff like that, but they're really expensive stuff. Everyone was kind of like, we don't do that. So that's kind of the way we do things here.
But in the 80s, there was the Ripcord in Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal's got a great scene now.
But that's a generation later.
Ah, sorry.
Like 3 generations later. Is there any? And I know that people. Okay, just a couple more questions. 3 more questions from 3 women, if you can hold on, please. Let's start. You've already had one. There was one back there. Who were you? Which one? Yes, let's go.
So I don't know if you guys have seen SLC, that movie.
No.
Well, I guess most of you haven't seen it, but I was just gonna ask how accurate or inaccurate would you say that movie depicts punk rock?
Where was it made?
Is it about Salt Lake City?
Yeah, it's actually different context, but I was just curious about how you guys felt it.
No, SLC Punk. Is that what you're talking about?
I haven't seen it.
I think it's a movie from the 90s.
Those mountains got in the way again.
I haven't seen it. The great punk archive film is Penelope Spears's film, The Decline of Western Civilization, hands down. She shot it and it was happening. It's not a retrospective. It's a snapshot of that scene at the time, and that film really gets better over time because of it.
SLC Punk is a scripted film.
Oh, it's a narrative.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
just came out like 5, 10 years ago. Maybe.
I think that's 98.
I don't find the punk narrative films are very good usually.
They can't beat punk rock Quincy anyway, can they? Or punk rock Chips. You know?
Oh yeah, those are great. Those are really good. That's really funny. They showed all those clips in Montreal when we just screened our film there. It was funny. There was you, and then there was yes.
I just had a question about what you guys see the punk scene in Vancouver as being now. Like it's always like you watch the film, and I've seen this the second time now, and I keep getting the impression that punk is over, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I understand that generation of punk maybe, but I just sort of wanted to know your general thoughts.
I think it's always reinvents itself in a different form. This is more a film about a scene. On the point that yes, the scene, the scene will come, a scene will go, a scene will have a natural ending. That's talking about this particular hive, right? So I always get kicked in the teeth by Doug Donut, especially because he goes, I'm one of the deluge of wannabes, Suzanne. Every time I see him, right? I'm part of the deluge of wannabes. But, no, it just, things, you know, things come and go and they come in waves. So that's my answer, but these people may all have different answers. Maybe starting with Brian, you just came back from the washroom.
Did you hear this question?
No, the question is, and it's one that's asked at every screening.
Yeah.
Do you think punk is dead?
Do I think punk is dead? No, I think it's, you know, probably alive and kicking, and probably even stronger than when, you know, back in the day when we were doing it, you know. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people that are in punk these days, I think.
Yeah, I was just more looking at like what you felt the scene was here now, and where you thought it was at.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a lot of really good bands in Vancouver, local bands, you know, that are playing around town. So
We're the geezers.
You know.
But it's still about the scene. It's still about the people that come out. You know, you're not playing a show to just play a show and be a douchebag. You're going so you can see your buddies. Your buddies are going to come out.
I want to see your band.
The receptionist, they're playing at your
Yeah, you can get her on free on Bandcamp.
It comes and it goes.
Yeah.
You know, it ebbs and flows, right? Like, you get a critical mass and shit happens like we had with the Occupy, and it dissipates, and, you know, people lick their wounds and you come back. You know, like, stuff pisses you off and a bunch of people get together, it's a nucleus, they create some shit like you guys did in '77.
Well, you have to have the perspective of history to judge it too, as to whether or not, you know, I mean, it's very easy to look back on this scene because of how well documented it was, and also because of, you know, the ramifications.
It was the first one.
Yeah, it was, yes. And the ramifications of it further down the line, the fact that people still treasure that music and value that music and everything, sort of, I think history kind of gives it that sort of, kind of legitimizes it, right? So, yeah, so you won't really know about that for another 30 years and see how it happens at that point, right?
But Vancouver, I came from Toronto, and if you went to see a band in Toronto, they had to have gone to New York already and somebody say, whoa, they're really cool, and then all of a sudden people would go see them. They wouldn't go see them just because they were from Toronto, like they'd have 5 people in the club.
Well, that gets
And
back
I
to
came out to Vancouver, and people loved the local bands.
Yeah.
They go, wow, let's go see the Trials of Jason Hoover. Let's go see Mother Tucker's Yellow Duck. Let's go. There were so many incredible bands in the city, and no one documented them. There's vinyl still in